The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 247.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Welcome back to the EL. Today we have Dorie Clark, author of Standout: How to Find Your Breakthrough Idea and Build a Following Around It. This was another fantastic interview. I actually had time to speak with Dorie a little bit beforehand, and extremely knowledgeable. I can't wait to dive into the book because I haven't had a chance just yet, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Welcome, Dorie, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Hey, Wade, thank you so much. Glad to be speaking with you.
Before we take a deep dive into your book, Standout, will you take just a moment to introduce yourself? Tell us just a little bit about you personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I live in New York City, and I spend my time these days doing kind of a mixture of things, the sort of portfolio career that a lot of folks have these days. I write books, including Stand Out, which is the most recent one, and Reinventing You. I teach for the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University, and I do a lot of speaking and marketing strategy consulting as well.
Excellent. So first off, thank you for sharing that. And now let's do what we're here to do today. Let's jump into your book, Stand Out: How to Find Your Breakthrough Idea and Build a Following Around It, which was made available actually not that long ago, a couple months ago, April of 2015. And Dorie, we're going to move quickly, but our whole goal here today is to cover those top questions that our listener has, the future reader would like to get answered before they dive into a book. And so the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing Standout?
Well, Wade, the inspiration for writing Standout was really stemming from my own experience as someone who worked as a marketing strategy consultant in a world where there's tons of consultants out there. And I wanted to understand personally how I could become known as one of the best in the field. I wanted to really get behind this question of how do you stand out? And so in writing the book, I had the opportunity to interview about 50 top thought leaders from a variety of different fields, everything from business and technology to genomics and urban planning, to really look at how the best in the business got to be that way. And so I wanted to try to reverse engineer that process and reveal it so that other people, other professionals, could really get out there and make a mark with their ideas.
So, Dorie, this next question is maybe the most important. It's not my favorite one, but it's maybe the most important because of how many books come out on a monthly basis. So what makes your book, and really what we're trying to do is here is separate, the needle from the haystack. So your book from all of the other millions of books that are going to come out this year. So what makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
What I really tried to do with Standout, Wade, was create a comprehensive roadmap so that professionals can become a recognized expert in their fields. And I don't actually think that it's been done in this fashion. I interviewed leading thinkers like Seth Godin, Robert Cialdini, David Allen, Gary Vaynerchuk, Daniel Pink, Tom Peters, all folks that I'm sure your listeners are familiar with, great business thinkers as well as people in different fields, and tried to create essentially a kind of framework, a step-by-step framework that if people follow it can enable them to make a bigger impact with their ideas and get traction and begin to get better known.
That's a fantastic group of people you just mentioned there.
Yeah, thank you.
If I was to think of, 3-4 people off the top of my head that were absolute top of the line experts in that field, you just named them. So that is that's phenomenal. This next question is a little bit different because we're really asking you, how did you write the book to be read? Is this a book that an individual can jump in and jump out, cherry picking information, as they need it? Or did you really design it to be read from front to back?
Folks can definitely pick up Standout and dive in wherever they'd like. The key organizing structure for it is that I really divided the book into 3 major sections. The first is finding your breakthrough idea. So some people are coming to it knowing they want to make a difference, they want to make a contribution, but they're not quite sure how or where. And so for them, the beginning section of the book is going to be the most useful because it's going to talk about strategies that you can use to begin to teach tease out what your breakthrough idea is. The second part is about building a following around your idea. So for people who have a clear idea what they want to accomplish and what message they want to get out there, this is going to be the most relevant section, because it's talking about the strategies that you can use to begin to get your community, your tribe, to use Seth Godin's word, behind you and your idea. And the final part, I think probably will be of interest to many people. It's about how to begin to monetize your ideas. How do you begin to make it sustainable to become a thought leader or a recognized expert in whatever your field of interest is?
That's excellent. Well, I picked out a couple of chapters that I need to dive into, especially the last one that you just said, because that's something that we're trying to do. Obviously we have a podcast that we're building where we're talking to, presenting books that every entrepreneur should, own and read in their personal library. So I bet I can get a ton, and I can't wait to dive in myself. So now I know where to start, right?
Absolutely.
So Dorie, now that we know a little bit of the purpose, a little bit of the background, the inspiration behind the book, let's take a deep dive into the content itself. Will you take really the next 5 to 8 minutes and give this future reader a great idea of what they're going to get out of your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start by telling a couple of stories. What I really tried to do in Standout is to profile and tell the stories of the people that I found most interesting, folks that I wanted to learn from. Because I think that one of the problems that we have with the way that we often talk about success is that people gloss over, the media glosses over the question of that moment of what the people did to become successful. Instead, it's almost like people are either presented as an overnight success, or it's like they've always been successful from the beginning of time. And so that moment of like, well, what did they actually do gets elided. And so a lot of people look at that and say, gosh, they must just be different than me. They must be a special person. I can't do that. And I really wanted to break down that barrier by telling the stories about how people were actually able to create these ideas and get recognized for them. So for instance, one that really stands out for me is I interviewed Robert Cialdini, who many of your listeners may know as one of the great behavioral psychologists, and he's an emeritus professor at Arizona State University, most famous for his book Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion, which has sold more than 2 million copies. And I was interested in this idea. He's considered the world expert in influence. How did he get there? What did that begin to look like? And so he was telling me he devised this framework of the 6 principles of influence and persuasion. No one had ever codified it that way before. And the way that he actually came upon it, it turns out, was that he did undercover work, literally. He went undercover in sales training programs, and he learned to sell vacuum cleaners and encyclopedias, and he learned to do photography sales. And he went through all of these, couple week long training programs so that he could learn the proprietary trade secrets that companies were not sharing with anybody else. And at the end of the session, he would go to them and say, look, I'm sorry, I haven't been straightforward with you. I'm not actually training to be a vacuum cleaner salesman. I'm a researcher. I will hold everything that you say, your name, in confidence, but can I report on the techniques that I've learned in the aggregate, and if I share the results with you? And he says that everybody said yes, because they were so hungry for information about what influence and persuasion really consisted of. And through this undercover field research, where he was talking to cult recruiters, he was talking to military recruiters, he was able to devise something that no one had ever come up with before, which is the fact that throughout time, everyone's been interested in and wondered about influence and persuasion, but it turns out there's only 6 fundamental principles. There's only 6 ways to persuade someone, and Cialdini figured it out.
That is phenomenal. That is, Dorie, I don't know if anyone's ever told you this before, but you're a very good storyteller.
Oh, thank you.
So you have a way of captivating, but I'm surprised some people, did he have any kind of backlash? I mean, was anyone actually mad? Like that he had wasted their time or anything like that? I'm just thinking that would take a lot of courage to go in there knowing that at the very end you're going to tell them, hey, I'm not here to sell
Yeah. He was worried for sure that they would, but actually, he said that really almost everybody he talked to was actually fascinated by the project, and they were just very eager to learn what his results were. That was the bargain, that if he let them use the information from the training program, he would share his findings. And no one had ever really studied it in that way and in that depth before. So once people got over the surprise of essentially having a spy in their midst, they were very keen to sign on as long as they could get access to what he discovered.
Yeah, and seeing how hungry they were had to be huge validation of what he was doing in the first place. So yeah, that's phenomenal. So this next question is really my favorite because it helps break it down. So you already broke it down, but now we're even going to take it a step further. And basically what I'm asking is if the reader could only take away one, concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book and everything that you've discussed with us today, what would you personally want that to be?
Yeah, it's so hard to pick one, but if I was forced to, the one that I would pick, actually, this is when I give presentations about Standout, I will often end on this note because I feel like it's an important message that I want to spread. One of the people that I interviewed in the course of I blog for Forbes, and have done a lot of research over the past couple of years along these themes. One of the people that I spoke to is a guy named Anthony Chan, who is a venture capitalist in Boston. And a couple of years ago, he wrote a book called Hearts, Smarts, Guts, and Luck, along with a couple of other co-authors. And the book is the result of a study that he did, because as a VC, Tony was really interested in the question about what makes entrepreneurs successful. What's their makeup like? What are their personality types like? And so he and his partners interviewed thousands of people to try to determine this. And what they came up with was that there's 4 principal personality types that entrepreneurs have. They are heart-driven, so they're just so passionate they're going to succeed on that basis. Or they are smarts-driven. They're just brainiacs that outthink everybody. They might be guts driven, so they're just very persistent and they keep going no matter what. Or the final one is that a significant subset of the entrepreneurs identified as luck driven. And that was the part that confused me at first, because what does that even mean? Why are they there? These luck-driven entrepreneurs. I mean, are they the screw-ups that don't have any other reason? They just they got lucky. But it turns out that when Tony looked into it, the luck-driven entrepreneurs actually had something very powerful in common, which is that they had a disproportionate amount of both curiosity and humility. And I think that that's so critical because, really what happened is because they were curious about other people and they were humble enough to realize that they had something to learn from everybody, it made them more likely than other people to be willing to talk with and engage with folks that other people might just pass by. They would be willing to have a conversation with a wallflower in the corner, or the person who looks out of place, or the person who doesn't fit in some way. And because everyone else is ignoring them, they're ignoring that opportunity. And so years later, when it turns out that person is somehow critical, everybody says, "Oh, they were so lucky. How'd they meet that person?" But it's because everyone else had the chance to, and they chose not to. But the lucky entrepreneurs, the ones who were curious and humble, were willing to talk to everyone, to learn from everyone. And I think that the more of that we incorporate into our lives, the more lucky and the more successful we'll be.
Mm. Do you know, was there a breakdown that he gave of percentages wise? I mean, is there something like 10% were luck, guts driven, or were they fairly even across the board?
I know that the luck-driven entrepreneurs, that was 25%, a quarter were luck-driven, but it wasn't an even breakdown. There were some percentages were larger than others, and in his book, he actually specifies it, but I'm afraid I don't recall right off the top of my head.
No, that's fantastic. We'll move on because we're going to do a book recommendation here in a little bit as well. But before we do, I want to ask you: do you have a favorite quote from your book? Something that you personally wrote that you either felt like, since it hasn't been out that long, that you either felt like was going to resonate with your audience or already has in that short period of time?
Yeah, well, I actually want to just call out actually the first couple of lines in my book, because I feel like it summarizes things for me. I stand out by saying, you have something to say to the world. You have a contribution to make. And I really want that to be the message more than anything, because a lot of people just step back. They say, "Oh, I can't come up with, a breakthrough idea. That's for other people. That's not for me. I'm just a regular person." And I really want to push back and say, no. Everyone has a contribution to make. Everyone has ideas that matter. And if you're willing to share them, if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and talk about them, they actually can make a profound difference if you're willing to try.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we'll put that passage in the show notes at the elpodcast.com. So many of they're entrepreneurs, so they're out there hustling right now, and so many of them are actually mobile compared to even the normal podcast base. So we'll put that again in the show notes so that they can go back and reflect on that. And Dorie, we're going to step away from your book for a moment here, and we're going to ask, we don't ask for just a book recommendation. We ask for the book recommendation. And just to give a little bit of the background, there are no rules. This doesn't have to be for entrepreneurs. It doesn't have to be business. It can be fiction, nonfiction. It's completely up to you. But if there's only one book you could recommend based on the way that it changed your life, maybe created a paradigm shift or a lifestyle shift for you, which book would you suggest?
So the paradigm shifting book, I would say that what I would recommend for people that would be most helpful is actually Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. That was a fantastic networking book. It was something that it's well written in general. It is something that is a great read, but also has powerful messages for people about living your life in better ways. And so I would recommend that to everybody.
Excellent. Well, Dorie, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to not only get more information on you, but also get more information on your book?
Yeah, thank you so much, Wade. So one thing I'll actually mention to your listeners is that I created a free resource. It's actually a 42-page free workbook that I adapted from Standout that has 139 questions that folks can walk through to help you step by step develop your own breakthrough idea and then build the following around it. And they can get that for free on my website, DorieClark.com. It's DorieClark. I also have tons of free articles, 400 free articles on my website. And if folks would like to connect on Twitter, I'm at Dorie Clark, and the books are Reinventing You and Stand Out.
Excellent. That is fantastic. And Dorie, is there another product or service? This is the opposite of a plug-free zone. This is a plug-away zone. So if there's something, a project that you're working on or anything, is there anything else that you'd like to mention?
Oh, thank you. Well, I actually have one other thing that I will mention. It actually just came out this week that we're recording it as kind of a follow-on to Standout. I developed an ebook called Standout Networking. It's just a short read. It's about a third of the size of a normal book, but it is just focused on networking and my insights around that. So if folks would like a quick introduction, it's I think $4 on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. If people are interested in learning a little bit about my style of writing and networking in general, that's a good entree and hopefully a gateway drug to Reinventing You and Stand Out.
That's perfect. That is perfect. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. So the links and everything. Dorie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book with us today.
Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you'd like more information on Dorie or her book, Stand Out, check out the show notes at the elpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.